River City Ransom. To the citizens of River City, I hold your high school captive. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
And like any good Ransom, this game starts with a note from the bad guys. They have River City captive and Ryan's girlfriend, specifically calling out Ryan's girlfriend. Feels like these two things aren't quite on the same scale. Like,
No.
Do they actually have the city captive? Like, is the mayor okay? Has anybody checked in on the mayor of River City? Or is this just like some kind of high school level prank?
I mean,
I
is
was under
it the
impression
high
was
school?
Just the high school. Yeah.
Is it the girlfriend? Or is it the whole town? It's not very clear.
Between River City and all this high school stuff, this feels like CW's Riverdale.
Yeah.
You know, that show with the Archie comics people, and by like season 1 it was already off the rails, but then eventually they join like a fight club and go to prison and get multiversal dimension.
What the show's about?
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Never watched it.
That show is so much better if you just read the people who do watch it, their tweets. If you just read their tweets, it almost sounds like they're making up ideas as it comes along. But the show writers are always one step ahead of them with the crazy nonsense that the show actually does. So,
is the comic like that?
The comic is not like that at all. It's worth mentioning that the comic is, depends. I haven't read like since CW released this show. I haven't read of like Archie comics, like got a re-release and updated with the times or whatever. But no, they basically just took the characters and a little bit of their personalities and then turned it into, the first season's like a murder mystery. Then the second season is like a gang wars style thing. And then the third season, I think Archie goes to jail, voluntarily joins the jail, and then starts an army of like shirtless
Can you do that?
dudes.
Can you like check yourself into jail?
It's a recurring theme on TV shows, right? Didn't Arrested Development do something similar?
Well, Arrested Development did that. That shouldn't be the bar.
I would put Riverdale right alongside Arrested Development as some of the zaniest television I've ever seen. Back on schedule, we're not talking about Riverdale, we're talking about River City. And that means Kunio-kun, who we've already seen a few of the Kunio games from the NES, Renegade and Super Dodgeball. We liked both those games, felt that they were lacking in a few things, so they didn't quite get on the essential games list, but we liked those games. The thing is that, we get the heavily Americanized versions of these games, and in Japan, it's a whole nother series starring this high school kid named Neketsu, and his town, River City, which finally we are seeing here as River City Ransom, but technically we've been in River City before for both Renegade and Super Dodgeball.
Yeah, this is like you finally get to see the expanded universe like from a top down.
Yeah, well, when I was playing Super Dodgeball, I was like, I really just want to get out of this like dodgeball court and see what else is out there. So this is really fulfilling that dream finally.
I mean, I don't think it was dodgeball in River City. I thought it was all over the world.
Yeah, I can't remember if it starts off in like a gymnasium and then moves on, but it does definitely like at least show like Mount Fuji and stuff like that. So you definitely are traveling to other areas.
Well, I was making that joke with no actual memory of that game.
Oh, how dare you?
So you didn't want like a Persona style high school simulator game when you heard that our high school was being held captive?
I don't know what exactly I wanted out of this game originally, because it's also a game that I've heard of, and I was like aware a little bit of the concept. So like I was kind of expecting a lot of like, I don't know, I was like mixing a lot of like RPG tropes into what I was thinking this was going to be.
Yeah, the only memory that I have of anything that's even named like this is Retro City Rampage, which is a completely different game from a completely different era, and that's just like a parody on a bunch of 80s things. So I was totally caught off guard by this.
And in a world where now everything has to have its own cinematic universe or be connected to everything to like be a respectable franchise, it's interesting that this River City Ransom and all these other games were linked together so early on in a way that maybe like even Super Mario Brothers hadn't quite done yet, you know?
Yeah, I kind of dig it because it doesn't. It's not too in your face. Like all these games, like if we weren't doing these podcasts and I was just playing these games, maybe I'd recognize that some of these dudes look the same and like, oh, maybe they're made by the same company and this is just their style. Like it, I wouldn't have really known if we didn't talk about this Kunio-kun thing background. They're all self-contained.
And in this one, you don't play as Neketsu because it's the American version. You're playing as Alex or Ryan or both if you have a friend. Ryan's the one whose girlfriend is kidnapped, yet like player one is Alex. So it's an interesting lead that they didn't think that it was important enough to steal like the main character's girlfriend. They were like, let's steal the guy who's most likely going to be player two. Let's take his girlfriend. Now, you can choose to be Ryan. That's fine. But there's a reason why they didn't say, I have your girlfriend. I have Ryan's girlfriend.
Can you be Ryan in single player?
Yeah, I think you get to choose, right?
Oh, you do get to choose. Okay.
Yeah. But, like, why would you choose to be the one that was weak enough to have his girlfriend stolen? I'd much rather be the heroic friend that rescues the other person's girlfriend.
You're going to steal his girl. Is that what
pretty much
the game is? Yeah, but also one thing to note is that right away on the menu screen, before any story really even is told, you can name your characters. So I didn't know it was going to be that significant. So like, all right, it's like I played 2-player and we named ourselves Joe and John, which is our names, and then it's like Ryan's girlfriend's been kidnapped, Alex, and I'm like, who are these people? Who are we talking to? It's just weird that it lets you change your name, but then doesn't change it in like the text.
Oh, interesting.
Now, Joe, that is a good point because the game goes as far as to have a lengthy dialogue system throughout of just whether you're actually playing the game, dialogue still continues, and then there's some cutscenes where dialogue takes place. Even in those, they don't take the time to correct them anywhere. So it's not just that they forgot the very first screen, they forgot it throughout the entirety of the game. So much that if you don't even rename the character and you're playing as Ryan, people will still tell you about Ryan's girlfriend to Ryan.
Well, they didn't want to have two different... obviously, there's no, like, variable that tells you, like, oh, use this character name. It's just Ryan, so they're not going to write it twice. That's a waste of time.
Right. And that part I understand a little more. They didn't want an alternate line where they have to actually change the words around. But, like, couldn't you just replace, like, as long as you keep it under a certain amount of characters, just replace Alex with whatever I input? Like, I assume that's not too... I mean, I feel like we've seen that before.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it, Joe.
Lazy.
Yeah.
They didn't do it.
And so,
which is why I'm voting this jank folder.
Whoa. Hold on. We got a while before we get to the votes, buddy, because we haven't even started to talk about the game, which is what I'm going to say very generously as a open world beat 'em up. We have played so many games where beat 'em ups are just defeat all the enemies on the screen, and then you can move a little bit forward. But in this game, you are actually not only able to just disregard the enemies and continue moving on, but you can actually backtrack and go to other areas to find specific locations where gangs hide out and beat up specific gang members for money and use that money to go to the malls, and different malls have different items and you buy different items at those malls to increase your stats, and those stats help you in the combat that you were doing both earlier on to defeat those enemies more easily, but also to take on harder enemies later on. So I think in a way, this is the beat-em-up RPG open world game that I personally didn't think was even possible on the NES.
Yeah, that's a pretty all-encompassing description of what this game is. Basically, the streets are just overrun with your enemies. Like the gangs are just all out. The only refuge from the gang violence is like the mall, which I assume is just like an agreed upon safe zone where all of the civilians go. It's just that's the gameplay loop. You go and you fight and you steal their money, and then you go to the green zone and eat some chili. And hopefully that raises your stats enough to go fight other guys with different colored shirts. And you just sort of explore, and like it's not just streets. Like there's warehouses and offices, and it's a pretty wide variety of places. And yeah, I agree, Mike. Like, it's very strange that I just didn't expect it to be as wide open as it is, even though it's, it's not truly open.
Yeah, I'm also like just impressed with how those two genres, the beat 'em up and the RPG, really like they really got them to sort of complement each other really well. Where like you're incentivized to play to do the beat 'em up stuff because you get your money, which is what is basically your experience that you use for the RPG elements, and then that money is spent on specific upgrades, hence the RPG element, where you're choosing what you want, which will help you decide how you want to play the beat 'em up. Like, it's really kind of like this nice cycle gameplay loop that keeps at least me wanting to do both elements of it, not feeling like, okay, let me just get back to the beat 'em up portion, or this beat 'em up thing is distracting. I just want to like play an RPG.
Well, yeah, but also it's pretty while I just praise the variety and like the sort of the scope of this game, like there really are two modes, and one is very much subservient to the other. Like, I'm never like, oh, I just want to go and pretend to spend money on food. Like, the animation's fun. Like, it's cool to just see him eat a whole plate of spaghetti or something. But one is very much in service of the other. There really isn't much depth to the RPG elements. It's really just stats going up. Like,
well, yeah, I'm not saying that I think that like, oh, literally the act of going into the mall and buying spicy chili is fun, but like I'm saying that the ability to choose your stats works really well in the beat 'em up element, like to choose your level ups and stuff. Like rather than just powering through, and I want to go do the RPG stuff because I know it'll help me with I guess that is kind of what you're saying too, but like each incentivizes me to do the other.
I was just looking forward to maybe the RPG elements being more than just stats, and like there being like side quests, right. And instead it's really just an economy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at, and that's what this game is missing in the RPG area, is just that, even if there weren't side quests, the whole like exploration idea of having this whole city available to you is limited in the sense of what you can actually do. So you're going mostly, even if the game tricks you into thinking like you've discovered, I can go north on this screen instead of going to the east. You're going mostly in a straight line fashion between districts inside the city that then eventually lead to mall safe zones where, surprise, the further into the city you go, the stronger items you get at the mall and the more expensive they are. So the game progresses that way, but otherwise you're just doing the same straight line style gameplay of beat up a bunch of characters, use the money that you just collected from them to then buy better items when you finally make it to the next mall. It's not like, oh, I'm in this new area of the town and I gotta figure out, like, I gotta solve the mystery here of like, who is the gang member I need to defeat for more information. You just kind of continue to move from screen to screen until you get to the lead gang member, and then it's you get some cool dialogue from them and you fight them, and they are more difficult for one reason or another, whether they have like really high health or they do a move that other characters don't do. You do that for a while, you take down these gang members. The point being that you can't actually interact or do anything in these areas, these districts within the city. You're just kind of using them as checkpoints between levels. So theoretically they are just stages, right? Like you could argue that before you get, when you start the game, you're on stage 1, and when you get to the first mall, that's like your checkpoint, and then you move on to stage 2.
Yeah. And then now that you mention it too, when I first started playing and got to this like mall or like town, city, whatever it is, a little mall section, I was expecting to have to like talk to people and get intel from people and like figure out where to go before I kind of realized, okay, there's really only ever one way to go. And if there's another way to go, it's usually like a dead end that you go to get something and then you go back out and keep going on the path you were going.
Yeah, those when you can go like north to like the stuff off the side of the street, it does look like oh wow, there's this sort of non-linearity to it, but it's really just a really long line with some short lines going off of it. It's not like a maze or anything.
And yet it felt like an early Yakuza game for me, for that franchise, where, going to the shops and buying everyday food or items to gain buffs is something that happens in those games too, where it's like, wow, do I really want to just buy, like a sashimi and have this temporary power up? Here it actually buffs your stats for good, but in Yakuza it's like that. It was just missing some mini games and, maybe a little more of the side quest stuff that we were just talking about to get that feel, but I still noticed that trend. You could also say that it was a little bit like the film The Warriors, with the various gangs, the cowboys, the squids, the zombies. All that's flavor in the manual. They really just change color shirts in the game and have different payouts depending on which gang they're a part of, which is interesting because the gangs change based on like how you enter the screen, right? So you can walk into a screen, see that it's like, oh, this time it's the Cowboys, and you're like, yawn, they don't pay enough. Leave the screen, enter right back in, and hope for a more expensive gang. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I did like the names of the gang, but yeah, I was expecting a bit more uniqueness to the enemy design. Like, we already saw this in like in Double Dragon, where every enemy has a really interesting character design. And when the whole like basis of this game is that each of these gangs are somehow different, I would have thought that there'd be a bit more variety there.
And another thing that this game is similar to Double Dragon in respect to, besides the fact that it's a beat 'em up, it also has the 2 enemy limit per battle, if you will. Like more enemies will spawn in after you defeat one of the 2 enemies, but you can never have like 3 enemies on screen at a time, 4 enemies on screen at a time. And in Double Dragon, maybe that was less noticeable because the sprites were a little bigger or the stages were a little more claustrophobic. But most of these are just, you're on the streets or you're in the parks or you're in open warehouses. And so the 2v2, or if you're playing by yourself, 1v2 aspect of this game constantly feels a little, too spread out. Like, it is kind of just easy, especially on the easier difficulty, to just work around these fights without, like you basically get to choose, like, do I need money or not? Do I need to save health or not? There's really not too many battles in this game that feel either different from the previous encounter or have like major set pieces or themes or based around the locations that they're at to make them stand out.
It's funny. I actually, until right now, didn't consciously notice that it's only 2 at a time. But I mean, yeah, you're right. So like, I don't know what it was about this game that was less noticeable for me. Maybe, I mean, I was playing I played 2-player, and then I played like halfway through a playthrough of single player. And I finished it in 2-player. Maybe it's because there were 2 of us on screen and 2 of them, and we were just talking, and it was just like there was a lot going on, and I just didn't like focus as much on like that. But that didn't stand out to me. But what obviously I did notice is the lack of like variety to the enemies. I mean, I think that the only difference in a lot of the enemies is like these guys take more hits, these guys take less hits, and then as far as like novice versus advanced mode, like you definitely notice the difference in like the aggression of some of the characters. Like some of them are like will run at you and stuff, but like they're all doing the same moves, they all have the same attacks. It's just like, are they bullet sponges or punch sponges or whatever, or are they not?
Yeah, the only opportunity that this game really gives you for a set piece is like one when you get like the bosses, and it's not really like the same kind of thing that we've seen, like, oh, you gotta fight on a train or anything kind of that interesting. But it's either something like that, or when you go to these places off the beaten path and you're not just like on the street where it seems to just be randomly generating or just continuously generating enemies as you walk. And yeah, you could just walk around a lot of these guys because there's not that like hold and stop and fight mechanic that we see in these beat 'em ups. But because the whole loop is fight to get money to upgrade so you could fight more, you're not going to get too far if you're not fighting, because then you won't have any money to get better at fighting.
Yeah, it's a natural incentive to fight rather than the game just saying like, nope, you have a quota to meet before you can move on.
It is a funny game though. It has a lot of charm and personality, not just in the cute sprite work design and stuff like that, but just the way that the enemies always say like barf when they get killed, or
Yeah.
I think they say a couple of other things like wham and stuff like that, or is this fun yet? There's charming things like that throughout the game with the dialogue system, but then there's also like when you're in the mall, you can order, I forget which person it is, but you can order a smile and it's free,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then you'll blush after you get the smile.
Like things like that are cute, and I'm glad that they're there. And to be honest, like even though this is one of those translated games, and sometimes that causes some weird syntaxes in the sentences, it's cute, and it's and it is telling like a story, or at least feels like a lived-in world because of the dialogue. No matter how much it repeats, I still get a kick out of barf every time.
Yeah, and it gives these people who barf or who are saying like, "Is this fun yet?" or "Wah" or "Mama" or whatever. They all have names too. It's just like unnecessary, but a nice little touch. Like you give a name to this person you just beat up.
Yeah, it's kind of got a not perfectly, but it's almost got like an Earthbound vibe where you're getting all these mechanics from a game, but everything is so normal otherwise. At least at first glance, like you're fighting against guys named Greg, and you're just walking by the garbage where you put the garbage at this warehouse, and like nothing's super over the top except for the action itself.
Since we were talking about Double Dragon and River City Ransom, what do you guys think about, I don't know if this is going to be mind-blowing or not, but they are made by Technos Japan, both games. We were kind of pitting them against each other, when in reality, they're made by the same developer, so they're clearly going for like two different kinds of things, right? The set pieces that were missing in River City Ransom, in the Double Dragon episode, we were kind of saying, or, I know Joe was definitely saying that as long as beat 'em ups are just this, they're not really like a complete package. River City Ransom kind of, maybe strips down the action intensity of what was going on in Double Dragon, but offers a longer, more intricate gameplay experience to the player with its own set of caveats.
Yeah, I did know that they were made by the same people, and that's kind of why I was surprised. Like, it doesn't need to be like these wild designs because they're going for a more grounded aesthetic here, but knowing that they're the same company, I would have expected something more than just different colored shirts,
Yeah, but I mean, as far as, because I didn't know that they were made by the same company, but I can see like them scratching different itches, sort of like like this is, like you said, this is kind of giving you like a different, maybe it sacrifices some things in the beat 'em up portion, but like gives you like a different overall experience. And I think it comes down to like, yeah, like the player preference of like what kind of game. Or I think it was our friend B Wood in the in our patron Discord said something like Double Dragon is a great game to play if you just like want to sit down and have a quick playthrough, or like just you only got a little while, you want to just sit down and play something. Whereas River City Ransom is like you're gonna take some time and like play a long playthrough of something, and you have a lot more like thinking about like how you want to play it to do and stuff like that. It could be totally poorly paraphrasing, but the point is I agree with that sentiment. Like I can see the appeal of this game for like really sitting down for like a long journey, and I can see why like you might not want to pick this one if you like you have a half hour and you want to just like play something real fast just because you're bored.
Well, you could do that. You just have to do a lot more writing down of very long passwords.
True. I didn't use the passwords at all, so I have nothing to add on the password front.
We could go all day on passwords.
We'll do a bonus episode about the passwords.
This could be more of a complaint about shop mechanics in video games, and maybe, not specific to River City Ransom, but something I noticed about the mall when you're offered so many choices, right? You're given so many different stores, and you're given so many different items to buy, and you could have I don't remember the exact items, but it's food, right? So let's say you could have a hot dog for $3 or a burger for $5, right? And nobody's telling you what the hot dog does until after you buy it, just like in real life, right? Nobody's telling you what that hot dog's going to do to you until you eat it. But $3 versus $5, and you don't have money to buy everything, and these are unlimited things. They're always going to have hot dogs at the stand, so you could buy as many hot dogs as you want. So it's not like, oh, buy the hot dog and then later upgrade to the burger like we're used to in shops. All this to say, I'm fine with all that. I think that that kind of stuff is intriguing and makes for a fun playthrough of imagine just ordering what you like. Like, I'm just going to order the dark meat chicken because I like dark meat chicken in real life, and I don't care for what the bonuses are, but don't ask me to buy the biscuits because I don't like biscuits. That's your own prerogative. When you get to the shops and you start noticing the items, which are priced at, the things you could actually equip on you. I forget what the Texas boots, I think they're called. Mm-hmm. They're like $100. And so that they're going to be pretty freaking good because food in that area is like $5. And now all of a sudden you've been greeted with a $99 item. You could just grind for the Texas boots and then have them and find out just how amazing they are. Is that good design that you're able to just unlock such a great item at your own willpower to be like, I'm going to just kill enemies that I don't really care about for as long as possible until I have enough money to buy the Texas boots, and then I'm just going to sail on through this game?
I guess we've talked about grinding and whether that's good or bad, and I think there are reasons to say yes or no. I think it's fine in the context of this game. I guess one thing that you could have done to circumvent that is you have to have hit some sort of checkpoint before it unlocks at the store. But then you also have to give the player a reason to go back there for any if it's going to be more linearly sort of balanced in that way, then you have to give them more of a reason to go back. I think it's fine. The one thing about the shops that I would have liked if they did differently is because there are other items besides just apparel and food. You could also buy CDs. You could buy new moves, and the moves actually are something different and aren't just a stat boost, but the clothes too are just another stat boost. I would have been interested to see just to give it more character, have this affect your actual character. I'd like to see the boots on my feet. I'd like to wear the gear and this is sort of my customized guy. And you could also buy music, and it would be funny if that actually changed the background music in the game, just to give it more of a reason for it's not just go to the store to upgrade your stats. Go to the store to customize, go to the store to have a bit more fun with stuff that isn't exactly 1-to-1 making you fight better.
Yeah, buy the color shirt of your enemies. This way that group of enemies doesn't attack you.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that idea of making these more than just the stat boosts, stat boosts, changing the music. I mean, I know that's asking for them to compose more music, but that would be amazing. But as far as whether or not I like the idea that you're kind of grinding for all of these items that you don't know what they are, I feel like I have a sort of complicated opinion on this because I played this two different ways. And I played it first. I played co-op, and we until today, actually, I didn't realize that you start with $20. I guess we just didn't know it. We didn't know what we were doing at first. So we were just buying shit and stuff. So then once I kind of like realized, okay, these things are doing stat boost, and I looked up like, what should I be buying? Like, what do these things do? And I saw like, okay, the dragon feet and the stone hands are supposedly like really good, and they are. We were like, okay, we got to go get $28 or whatever, which we could have gotten pretty easily from the beginning, but since we didn't know that we started with $20, we were already at zero. So we were grinding, and it was actually kind of a challenge because every time you die, you lose half of your money. So like we were like going through like, I would escort my co-player John. I would escort him somewhere and just like, it's okay if I die as long as you get a bunch of money until you can afford it, and then once you have it, you escort me until I get a bunch of money so I can afford it. So we would never, and it was like it was kind of a fun thing, but
that's interesting.
And then like after we got those. Like the stone hands and the dragon boots were like, wow, like this, we really do feel like we charged up, and it was very satisfying. Then I played a single player game, and in that game, I'm like, okay, I already know, and look, I got $20, so I just beat a few people, went and bought the dragon boots right away, and I do feel like I had more fun the other way, like not knowing. So like I feel like I kind of wish that I didn't look up what these things did. This is just my preference though. Like so, like it was fun to kind of have to figure it out as you go along. Even though we did eventually Google it, it was fun to be like, okay, how do we solve this problem of having zero money? When you start from the beginning, knowing exactly what's good, that it was still fun, but I was a little overpowered, I think, from the beginning. And I think all that to say, I think this is like a game where you can really, good or bad game design, I think it's designed in a way where you can really choose how you want to play this game. Which, like, you can just power up your punches and just get items that power up your punches and just be like, I'm just going to do the punch. You could never get the stone hands, which really changes the punch, and be like, let's see if I can get my regular base punch strong enough. Like, maybe I'm overthinking, like, other ways to, like, maybe I'm getting into, like, speedrun territory of I'm trying to come up with, like, other challenges in this game. But I feel like it's kind of built in that way, where you
I think so.
I'm just going to be a weapons master in this game or something. So, like, in that sense, I think it is good game design.
Joe, this game in general benefits from knowing as little as possible going into it. I don't think this is a game that you want to go under the hood. And even if you do go under the hood, I think it's like disappointing what you might learn about min-maxing like you were getting at, but also just even, I don't know, you buy the army boots, right? And if you look up on Wikipedia or Game FAQs, which is the Wikipedia of games, it's punch plus 10, kick plus 10, agility plus 10, jump plus 4. Like, those things don't mean as much as they feel in the game. And even just like using any kind of guide for this, like, it's a pretty straight line game anyway, but using a guide to figure out like the locations of the gangs and like where the next theoretical boss fight is just cheating yourself out of like maybe the 5 minutes that it takes to roam around the area and find the little like alcove that leads to the park or the warehouse or something. Like, it's not that challenging of a game. It's simple enough that it's not worth like cheating yourself out of that experience of figuring it out on your own. But also, even the complicated mechanics of the game, such as the 20 stats that you can move around and upgrade and unequip items and do the whole gambit on, that stuff isn't as interesting to know. Like, oh, okay, so the chow mein is kick plus 1, stamina plus 35. It's like, just eat the chow mein.
Well, here's where I'm like this is where I was on the fence. I totally agree that like looking up where the boss is or where you have to go next, like in this game particularly, does feel like it's robbing you of some of the fun. And like I already said, when I looked up what the items do and then used it at the beginning of the game the playthrough, I felt like I was losing something. But I am also like, I do think it's like so far on the other extreme where it's like, okay, like there's a lot of, it takes some time to accumulate this money, and there are a lot of things that are expensive that some do really good things, and some, I think there's one, it's like the stomp boots or whatever, where you like can jump on enemies. It's pretty expensive, and it really doesn't do that much. Like, I wish it gave me something. It doesn't have to tell me like, oh, this is punch plus 1 and kick plus 2, but it'd be like, hey, this is like a, sushi roll. Hey, eat this to get stronger. And it's like, okay, well, some things can get stronger. I don't know exactly. Like, I wish there was a happy medium. I wish I had some idea of what I was spending my hard-earned money on.
Yeah, just a little description.
I don't want to know exactly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and with some, like, flavor text to just allude to what it does, I think that would have been helpful. There's enough room.
And the manual
on
sort of does
the
exactly
UI.
that, but...
Yeah. Well, you were talking about like being a weapon master, and that just reminded me, like, unlike a lot of the beat 'em ups that we play, like the gear on the ground doesn't just like suddenly flash away. Like you can once you have something, it's sort of there, and your gear doesn't break. So you only get rid of your weapons when you really want to get rid of your weapon, or I guess you die. And so when you like sort of transfer from one level or area to the other, you also keep that weapon. So I just thought it was funny that, like, you can end up going into the mall with a trash can hovering over your head, and you just sort of continue with the game. You can't attack in the malls. You're just carrying this trash can around, like, menacingly over your head in this supermarket or whatever. It's just a funny little thing I noticed.
Yeah. We also discovered actually that in the malls you can't put your item down. So if you have that trash
Yeah.
can, you cannot get rid of it while you're in the mall.
Well, thank goodness, because once I have those bricks, I don't ever want to lose them. Those bricks are like the best item you can pick up and just hit people with, because it's like it instantly stuns them with the knockback, so that you hit them and then they fall down, then they get back up. You hit them right again on the head. It could be slapstick comedy for some, but for me, it was a great way of making progress fast in this game.
I was
Sounds
a
like
big
you
like
cheated
whatever
yourself.
the chain whip.
Yeah,
I
chain
was a big
whip was
chain
good.
chain guy until I got the dragon feet, and then I would just pick up the chain or whatever item to throw it at someone, and then just dragon feet everyone to death.
Apparently, there's also a longer chain. I don't know if it's like Simon Belmont chain long, but like apparently there's a long chain, a pole, a ladder, and a bucket, and those are the like rare items that you might see in your playthrough. Otherwise, all the same normal stuff.
Speaking of rare items, can I ask you guys something? As always, I'm watching some footage of the game while we're recording, and this guy, whoever's playing this on YouTube, just walked into like literally like a secret area that you wouldn't see, and there's a secret shop. Did anyone see this secret shop that sells Excalibur, Zeus's wand, gold medal, bunch of
not in my playthrough, but I did see that while I was watching other people play. I don't know what happens when you buy one, because in my thing, he didn't buy anything there.
Yeah, I think we're watching the same one. He didn't buy anything. What the heck?
Well, also some of those things, that's Merlin's shop. So some of those things aren't available until you clear the game at least once.
Oh.
But
Maybe
that has like the cheat code section. So unlike some of the other things that just have stat boosts, right? You were saying the Excalibur is just like a stat boost thing. But what was another one, Joe?
Zeus's wand.
No. Give me something different. Those are stats. Those are
There's
stats.
only like 4.
Let's see. Rodin wing?
Okay, the Rodin wing.
Gold medal?
No. Okay, so yeah, so this guy, this is a playthrough where the guy didn't beat the game at least once first before playing this file, because there are things such as being able to buy cough meds that change your stats randomly. You can buy lotto tickets for the chance to win big money on your lotto ticket. You can buy the Rocketeers to run super fast. You can buy the Skaters for $500 to have a teleport attack. And then this one sounds interesting. For $999.90, not 99 cents, because you can't collect pennies in this game. You can unlock the custom character to change characters. Now, I have to imagine that's only changing between whether you were Alex or Ryan, right?
That's weird.
Maybe you can change between like some of the enemy sprites.
It'd be cool if that was possible. This sounds like Merlin's Mystery is actually the cheat code store, like the Game Genie of the game.
That's some great like replay value for a game this old.
Yeah, buying cough medicine and having your stats change randomly is just like real life.
Yeah.
Get that scissor.
Exactly.
Another thing I was thinking about, because I brought this up earlier, and we didn't quite answer it, but I think you guys had some great shop discussion otherwise. I think it's fine now that I'm going back and thinking about my personal experience with the Texas boots, because think about it. If you're a high school kid in the neighborhood and you see that there's a expensive item at your local store you might like do some hard work, save up, and then you have that awesome thing. And sometimes it's not so awesome, the thing that you hyped up in your head and you bought for a large amount of money. And other times it is the Texas boots and you start kicking ass all over town. Maybe not that specific, but in the River City Ransom world where everybody just beats the shit out of each other, that would make perfect sense for your character to walk by the window, do some window shopping, be like, I can't wait to get those. I'm just gonna keep killing people until I get money for it.
I think if you're like an extreme role player, then fine, yes. Like if you're playing this the way that I play like Skyrim, then yes.
And who's not playing River
more
City
of that.
Ransom like Skyrim?
That's true. I couldn't wait to be bit by a vampire and have to figure out how to fix that. You know, I wish there were more vampires in this game.
That's true. Very few.
It is worth mentioning with the whole like stats thing, since we're not getting in depth on that and all the various stats that you can upgrade.
There's too many stats.
Yeah, there's so many stats. The point being that you actually do have to upgrade those stats. You cannot like. I actually don't know if you can beat the game on low enough stats. I'm sure that's a challenge that somebody has done. But certain boss fights in this game from the rival gang members will just go on for almost forever if you don't work on boosting your stats. So you have to eat that California roll, and you do have to listen to that rock and roll music, because otherwise you just won't have the stats appropriate by the end of the game.
Yeah, I didn't beat the game, but I did notice that like as I was progressing, they were becoming more, I guess, punch sponges, which I mean is one way to make it more difficult, because like the enemy AI, well, I think it's actually impressive that there's like several different states that they can be in. Like they might be like waiting for you to get away from a weapon so they can go and retrieve the weapon. Like some of them will sort of back up if you've been a little too aggressive. That being said, there are really only so many things that can be done in a fight in this game by an enemy, so there isn't a lot of progress on that. So when in doubt, just make them have more HP.
And they're forgiving on the dying in this game too.
Yeah, I appreciated that. It's still a like when Joe was saying, you lose half your money, and when half this game is just acquiring currency to be better at killing, that's kind of a slap on the wrist itself.
Yeah, I think it's a nice balance, the losing half the money rather than having to start the game over, which like other or do even a section over, which a lot of other games have done, because it's still a punishment. It's not just completely forgiving, you know, but you don't lose all of your progress. One more thought. Did you guys play on Novice or Advanced?
I was on Novice.
Yeah, I played on Novice first, and I couldn't help but feel like that can't be the actual intended experience. It's funny when we get that stuff in the American version, because usually they give us like either the hard mode, or they say, no, can't make the games too hard for them. We got the choice of both, but the Novice one I was kind of flying through, so I did go back and play the, what was it called, Advanced?
Advanced.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the difference? Because I beat the game on Novice, and then I played about to like the warehouse, wherever that is, like a little ways through single player on Advanced. And so far, Advanced, I see the difference, but when I'm looking online, people are saying like Advanced is really, really hard. So maybe it gets really, really hard at the end or like later in the game. But so far, I'm not noticing it being like that much harder than Novice.
Well, the Advanced thing, I think what I noticed in my playthrough is just that you do have to spend more money on things that, you know, like you have to boost your stats faster earlier on to continue to keep up with the power creep in the game. I don't know if maybe you were just buying the right items, but I feel like some people might not be might not be grinding enough early on to buy big ticket items to be able to continue to make the progress that it sounds like you and I were able to make on Advanced mode. I agree, it's not nearly as challenging as what was being described, but it is definitely like Novice mode by comparison was a bit of a cakewalk.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at first, when we didn't realize like the best way to play the game, we were having trouble getting the money. But But yeah, I mean, I guess it also kind of comes down to the fact that Advance was my second playthrough, and that's when I already knew like the optimization strategies a little more.
On the sequels and spin-off side, River City Ransom has a few ports. It got a port on the X68000. I'm always surprised to say 1000. I always think it's going to be X6800, but no, it really is that many zeros. And
Wow.
on that one, it has a few enhancements over the NES version. They have now figured out how to get 3 enemies on screen.
Whoa.
Yes, not 4, but 3. It's a good upgrade.
I mean, that we joke, but I feel like that would add some complexity to the fights. Just that one extra guy.
Yeah, they also added in things that we're familiar with in the Double Dragon series, such as the headbutt and the whirlwind kick. That was that was in the game, but only for enemy characters in the NES version. In the X68000 version, you can learn those moves too. In the PC Engine version of the game, which it was for PC Engine Super CD-ROM, so I feel like, what is that? Is that like a really expensive? Is that like the N64 DD, where like nobody really ever played that? Have you guys ever heard of the PC Engine Super CD-ROM? The N64 DD was the disc drive version of the N64 that was only released in Japan.
That's wild, because always the biggest like knock on the N64 was the what you could put on a cartridge. So.
Yeah, but they weren't CDs.
What was the disc?
The discs were like floppies. It was crazy.
Oh my god!
They really couldn't.
I
They
thought
really
maybe
couldn't
it
get
was-
it together.
Weren't they working with Sony at one point?
That
and they,
was
like,
for the
threw
Super
them
Nintendo.
out?
was
Yeah.
That was Super Nintendo.
Oh,
was-
I thought you were talking about the PlayStation. Okay.
Yeah, the Nintendo PlayStation. That was
Yes.
going to be their follow up to the Super Nintendo with which basically like a SNES with a CD drive.
Anyway, to answer your question, I have not heard of this thing.
Right,
I'm sure
looking.
it's just like that, though.
I'm looking into it, and it does link you back to the TurboGrafx 16, but that's just what the PC Engine is. So the PC Engine Super CD-ROM must have been like the Sega CD, where it's like a really expensive, like you attach it to your base console, and then also buy even more expensive CDs to play these games. All that to say, this was in a collection of games. It included Super Dodgeball, Double Dragon 2, and looks like another version of... Nope, that's it. That's all they gave us. But it featured enhanced graphics, fully voiced characters, so that's pretty cool. And the player's progress is saved via just the PC Engine's memory, not you having to type in incredibly long passwords.
So they are saying, like, barf out loud.
I think they would have given them new lines of dialogue other than just barf, but I can't confirm.
Okay.
I would
I'm
have
going to choose to believe that.
I would have liked to have just heard people say barf rather than make a vomit sound effect.
Yes,
Right.
saying barf is better.
Then there's the Game Boy Advance version of River City Ransom, EX, which by all accounts is the best version of River City Ransom. Don't let the box art fool you. The box art has this weird, like, I don't know, Ben 10 meets Samurai Jack style animation on the box art, but they didn't change. Yeah, don't worry about those. Don't worry about those references. They didn't change the graphics in the game. The real change is that instead of a true cooperative mode where Joe and his friend can play the game can be played with an AI controlled partner.
Like ChatGPT?
Yeah, so yeah, like why would this version be considered better if it lost something that even the NES was capable of? The Game Boy Advance had a link cable. But apparently it does a bunch of other things too. It makes it so that this way you could play you could choose like which allies and enemies you want on this on your particular playthrough. You can change your character's appearance. You can do different, like, because there's more the shoulder buttons and stuff like that. There's different ways to perform the techniques. I don't know. I don't think River City Ransom EX sounds like enough of an upgrade for me. And so I'll be sticking with the NES version. Or maybe I'll buy out the PC Engine Super CD-ROM and figure out what that whole thing is. Never even heard of it.
I think we need it just
You're going to buy them out?
like laboratory like research purposes.
I'm going to buy every single last one, Joe, because there's got to be like, what,
Yeah.
5? But you know what there's more than 5 of?
I was wondering how you were going to do that.
Fingers. Wait, no, there's 5.
Well, no, it depends. Yeah, I guess you're
10
technically
per
right.
person.
Yeah, you're technically right. There's more than 5 per person, but only 5 per hand.
True.
You hope.
I'd hope.
Yeah. No, there are more than 5 essential games on the essential games list, and we're about to find out if River City Ransom is our next game on the essential games list. This is a charming beat-em-up game with a simple plot and simple gameplay. It attempts to feel bigger with the shops and the idea of exploration, but they didn't break up the feel of the areas, enemies, or even the bosses from the enemies enough to actually make it feel like the world or the player were evolving other than just, I eat this food and now my willpower has increased. The dialogue was fun. The simplicity of the game can make progress feel good, and if you're playing on the novice mode, it can make it feel fast too. You could theoretically beat this game faster than you could beat Double Dragon, because Double Dragon's a hard game to beat, right? You might never get to the end, whereas with enough time, you could get to the end of River City Ransom. Once you realize that you're not doing much different area to area, the game does kind of lose a little bit of its appeal and becomes more of a neat, like, I didn't even think they would make this kind of game on the NES, yet here we are. Unfortunately, as we found out on other Essential Games List votes, just because we didn't think it was possible on the NES isn't enough to get it on there. So for me, this is not essential. Joe?
I had a great time with this game. As far as a beat 'em up goes, I mean, this is so far the one that I've felt that I had like the most agency in how I play. Now, granted, some of that stuff, like when you really look at it, there is an easy optimization choice, and it doesn't necessarily like. It's not like there's some crazy wide range of things you can do, but there's a lot. There's a lot of ways. So there's a lot of reasons to replay this game. There's a lot of charm in the shops and the food and the way that you decide on how you're leveling up, and it really is noticeable in the game. I do feel that there's progress. Well, it could definitely like fulfill other things on my wish list and become more robust and have more variety in the enemies and whatnot. It's just a simple, straightforward game that like has plenty of depth. Like I don't know, maybe that's redundant or that's contradictory, but I had a blast with this game. It was great to play in co-op, and also had a good time playing single player. So I can't not vote this on. I think this is a fantastic beat 'em up, and the RPG elements just make me want to keep coming back for more, trying more things. I think this is absolutely essential.
Sean?
Yeah, we've been nitpicking this game. Like we've kind of gone back and forth between nitpicks and just like, oh wow, that's really cool. I do have a lot of things on my wish list for this game. Like those weird like customization options to give more weight to your shopping experience. The variety of enemies has a little bit to be desired. But one thing that we didn't really like say before is while it is kind of just a simple beat 'em up, like the simple beat 'em up does feel very good, and the kind of lower barrier to entry, or just I guess lower barrier to progress, makes this like a very cool like hangout game, even if you're just hanging out by yourself, because I didn't have a person to play with and I still enjoyed my time here. So I can only imagine that co-op is a lot of fun too, going back on Joe's perspective. So yeah, just like the unique vibe, the tight controls, being able to pick up dudes in the same way that you'd pick up a trash can and throw them at their friends, like that's fun. Like I just had too much fun with this game to not also vote yes, it is essential.
And with that, it's on the essential games list. So now there's definitely more than 5.
There is more than 5.
There were more than 5.
just one last thing, because we end up in discussions like this before. Like, oh, there's like already an EX version, so isn't that like the better one? Well, Mike even said himself that maybe he would prefer the standard version. So
I don't know why you wouldn't. If it misses the co-op. I don't want to play with a computer as my co-op partner.
yeah, see, there it is. I'm very
Game Boy
defensive.
Advance sucks.
That's an interesting debate for another day, Joe. Is the Game Boy
Probably gonna lose that
No,
debate,
no.
I
Like,
would
is the
imagine.
Game Boy Advance actually better than the Game Boy, though? Like,
Okay.
was it better? Now with the retrospective catalogs, well past their prime, which one holds up better? I don't know. Game Boy Advance certainly has a lot of great games, but I would actually say I probably look more fondly at the DS these days than I do the Game Boy Advance, and I'm not sure which one I'd pick between Game Boy Advance and Game Boy. So, Joe, you might have opened up a whole new world for us.
There we go.
Maybe a whole new
Boy didn't
podcast.
have Nintendogs.
We can do like a console wars podcast, console versus console, always pitting up two different consoles. Forget this podcast.
Right.
Yeah,
This
is
is
the last
done.
episode.
Right. We figured out River City Ransom is essential, and now we have to figure out which Game Boy Advance games are essential in Advanced-stalgia.
Ooh.
It's advanced.